Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news: Prince William set a banning order on Harry forever for a reason, revealed by a royal expert. In a recent TV appearance and the comments that followed it, broadcaster and commentator Piers Morgan said that Prince William, the Prince of Wales, would never forgive his younger brother, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. Morgan's statement was made as part of a larger explanation of a connection that has been the focus of a lot of public attention for a long time. It occurred at a time when there were still worries about the future of the monarchy and the chances of two brothers getting back together following their public split, when the Sussexes decided to step down from prominent royal responsibilities in 2020. Since that departure, a series of high-profile interviews, autobiographies, documentaries, and media appearances have kept the public talking and opened up new lines of investigation regarding the royal family's intentions, allegiance, and possible results. In this perspective, Morgan's comments should be seen as an interruption in an ongoing media debate where personal complaints, institutional constraints, and public narratives all affect and reinforce one another. Morgan started his answer by talking about what he called reliable sources in royal circles and how close he was to members of the family, including Queen Camilla, who he had already mentioned. He said that his assessment was based on connections and talks he had had over many years about the monarchy. That mix of claimed intimate knowledge and professional background made his statement seem more important. He added plainly that William would never forgive Harry, making the split seem profound and maybe even permanent. He said it was because of public actions that Morgan said had hurt Harry's feelings and reputation. He characterized such wounds as personal affronts and institutional attacks rather than typical sibling disagreements, suggesting that they had modified the foundational basis for all subsequent interactions. Morgan's judgment came with an understanding of the constraints. He told the interviewers that families are complicated, and that he couldn't say he knew everything about what goes on behind closed doors in the House of Windsor. Still, he kept saying how serious the Sussexes' public comments about royal family members were, from claims about King Charles III to criticisms of Queen Camilla and accusations against Catherine, Princess of Wales. He said that these comments, which were made more public through books, documentaries, and high-profile interviews, had changed the way the family interacted with each other in ways that would make it hard to forgive. He made a clear distinction between private reconciliation and public performance. He said that certain types of disclosure and public criticism cause a new and more lasting level of harm that is difficult for families and organizations to deal with. Dan Wootton, the presenter of the show, said that Morgan's comments were very important since Morgan was said to have ties to the royal family. Wootton spoke a lot about Morgan's closeness with Queen Camilla and made it clear that the commentator was not only an outside observer but also someone who could pass on feelings that were close to the senior royals. By putting Morgan's position in the context of a network of palace connections, Wootton made it seem more likely that the assessment that William would not make up with Harry was not just one person's viewpoint, but also reflected the views of other people who work with or around the monarchy. The interviewer's wording made the theme of unforgiveness seem like a voice that had institutional weight, not just a talking point in the media. In addition to making a particular prediction regarding forgiveness, Morgan also criticized the Sussexes' public image and behavior in general. He characterized a significant portion of their conduct via the concept he termed wokeism, a phrase he created to encapsulate several modern cultural dispositions he perceives as performative moralizing, self-victimization, and a dissonance between espoused principles and private behaviors. Morgan's cultural critique was both moral and rhetorical. He said that the Sussexes frequently do what he termed virtue signaling, while living lives and making decisions that make their public advocacy less credible. He stated he was less and less interested in them, but he admitted to including the pair in a chapter of his own book on the royal family. This was a tiny admission that showed he wanted to separate himself from the couple intellectually, but he also recognized their continuing popular importance. Morgan listed specific complaints that he thinks show the worst parts of the behavior he criticizes: the tendency to act like victims while blaming others to take up public environmental and social causes, while living in ways that seem to contradict those causes and to create media narratives that focus on grievance as a way to justify oneself. He used examples to show hypocrisy, like speaking out against environmental damage while taking a lot of private jet trips, speaking out against systemic inequalities while attending expensive high-profile parties, and making money off of personal stories through media deals and memoirs. Morgan said that these things together made up an underpinning of hypocrisy, double standards, virtue signaling, and victimhood that he linked to the woke attitude he doesn't like. His criticism was aimed at both the substance and the way the Sussexes spoke in public. It wasn't only what they said, but also how they said it and how they made money off of what they said that, in his opinion, hurt their credibility. There was also an allegation concerning the couple's reputation in the U.S. that went along with that criticism. Morgan added that the Sussexes' cultural cachet across the Atlantic had gone down. "Her status over there, if you ask Americans, is pretty low now," he remarked. He said that they are no longer seen as A-list celebrities, but as falling stars. That comment had two purposes. First, it said that the couple's plan of becoming involved with the public, making media appearances and narrating stories, has not led to lasting popularity or a strong platform of influence. Morgan tried to connect personal consequences to strategic mistakes by saying that Harry's popularity was going down. He called it a sadness for Harry, and wondered what really he thinks he's getting out of all this. In this reading, notoriety becomes self-limiting. While publicity can get you attention right away, it doesn't always lead to long-term authority or moral credibility. The couple's claim during a 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview that a senior royal had voiced concerns about the possible racial color of their then-unborn baby Archie is at the heart of the disagreement and Morgan's angry memory of what happened. That incident sparked a worldwide discussion about race and the monarchy, and it has since been a topic of contention about who is to blame the situation and the aim. Later, in another interview, Prince Harry seemed to provide a more nuanced description, saying that the event may be best defined as a case of unconscious bias rather than open bigotry. Morgan flatly rejected that reframing, calling it absolute horseshit, which meant that he rejected both the details of the accusation and the milder language the Duchess and Duke employed later. The argument over what to call and how to understand the event, whether it was overt racism, unconscious prejudice, or something else, has remained a flashpoint that makes any simple road to reconciliation more difficult. The interview with Oprah also had direct effects on Morgan. He has said many times that he lost his job on the morning show Good Morning Britain after questioning the Sussexes' allegations. He still sees this as a public career moment that he is angry about, and he says it makes his comments more personal. He declared on the air, "We all saw that Oprah interview," and then he spoke about how his response to it changed his work life. The way that punditry, personal consequences, and long-lasting media narratives all mix together shows how easy it is to cross the line between public remark and private reputation in the age of mass media. Morgan and his guests connected the Sussexes' actions to bigger problems for the monarchy as a whole. He said that the pair had trashed the monarchy and become very unpopular in Britain, using polls as proof. The use of public opinion measurements in this discussion is important because it doesn't just look at approval ratings as temporary data points. It also looks at them as signs of how well an institution is doing. Morgan contended that prolonged unpopularity significantly affects public perception of the monarchy and its ability to perform conventional civic and ceremonial functions. This thesis argues that the Sussexes' public disclosures and media engagements are not only personal decisions with private repercussions, they pose reputational risks with possibly enduring institutional ramifications. After the show, Dan Wootton and a guest commentator named Tash, who is linked to a YouTube channel called According to Taz, talked more about Morgan's view and gave more analysis that backed up the idea that Prince William's position is morally defensible, practical, and unlikely to change. Wootton said that William's position was principled because the prince wants to maintain the future kingship's dignity and stability. Wooten said, "It doesn't matter what Harry does now. It doesn't matter what Meghan tries to do. None of that matters. William isn't going back on this." He said that William's unwillingness to make up was planned and protective, not just a reaction. He called William's answer ruthless, not in a hostile way, but as a necessary firmness meant to avoid future harm to his reputation. Tash added to and strengthened this point by saying that William has experienced firsthand how his brother's public actions have affected elder family members. She said that William watched his grandparents and implied that he saw what the Sussexes' public stories did to the family's elders. He watched his grandfather slowly pass away as they trashed the whole family on TV for money. He watched his grandmother's broken heart as she got weaker and weaker. Tash's story is very emotional, showing a picture of personal grief and betrayal that justifies a defensive stance. She stresses the emotional damage done to older family members to make William's distancing seem not only understandable, but also ethically necessary, a kind of stewardship that puts institutional stability first. Tash was especially interested in claims that people were attacking Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She said such acts were particularly inexcusable since there were claims that private messages had been made public or used as weapons to make the princess seem bad. He helped show Catherine and Meghan's text messages to try to make her look bad to make a point. "I would never forgive him," she claimed, using the release of private texts as an example of both a violation of sibling trust and an institutional crime. Tash's moral reasoning is based on the idea that personal betrayal and public damage are connected. She said that once privacy has been violated and private messages have been made public to support a story, trust has been fundamentally changed. Tash painted a strategic picture of William, comparing his style to that of his late grandfather, Prince Philip, who was frequently portrayed as strict and determined in public. "I think he's got his grandfather's head on his shoulder," she said, which means that William's way of leading is planned and disciplined. She also said that the monarchy requires an iron fist to control those who are seen as wayward relatives and to stop conduct that may hurt the institution. The use of the phrase iron fist is a rhetorical move. It changes an unwillingness to reconcile into a way of governing that is meant to protect the reputation of the institution and stop it from happening again. Tash also said that William's unwillingness to forgive was a way to protect his immediate family, showing that he was worried about the health of his wife and children. She said that William wouldn't let the Sussexes have any power or be a possible danger when he becomes king, since it would put his wife's health and his children's well-being in jeopardy. She stated, "He doesn't want Harry and Meghan to be able to put any kind of pressure on his kids or make things hard for them." She claimed that protecting his family was a big reason for staying away. This idea of future guardianship, in which a future monarch must think about not just the short-term optics, but also the long-term privacy and security of his successors, is one of the rhetorical foundations that support non-reconciliation. The show also spoke about Omid Scobie's 2023 book Endgame, again pointing out a Dutch version that said King Charles and the Princess of Wales were the two senior royals who were said to have made remarks regarding Archie's possible skin tone. Tash said that the Sussexes have never put out a statement in reaction to the names of some people in that translation. This shows that there is still no clear public explanation. The translation and its identifying of people make the story more complicated and show how tales can evolve as they move around and through marketplaces. Translations and subsequent publishing may add additional facts, make things more unclear, and make public arguments last longer. The mention of the translation shows how different people, such as biographers, translators, and publishers, change the text and how others think about it. One of the main topics of the show was comparing the Sussexes to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, whose image has been badly hurt by separate but ongoing controversies. Some columnists and analysts have said that the way the public has treated Andrew is unfair, and that the Sussexes should have more compassion instead. The commenters on the show vehemently disagreed with that point of view. Wooten called a column by Rebecca Reed in the newspaper that said the Sussexes were basically saints compared to Andrew, absolute rubbish. This was part of a larger effort to stop people from downplaying the Sussexes' alleged wrongdoings by pointing to other scandals. Wooten and Tash said that comparing scandals might make it harder to see the individual damages and obligations that each situation implies. Other comments and postings on social media added to that rejection by making analogies that were meant to warn against becoming too comfortable. One post that was referenced said, "Harry and Meghan are just as bad as Andrew and Sarah, but they're 30 years behind them." It also cautioned that if the Sussexes' conduct isn't dealt with now, it might lead to a worse disaster in the future, like Andrew's drop in status. That argument cites a past case as a warning. If reputational issues aren't dealt with, they may become worse over time. Tash agreed with this idea and said that Andrew and Sarah Ferguson's difficulties were just the same as the Sussexes, and that the Sussexes' business opportunism and inability to listen to advice were symptoms of similar patterns recurring across generations. Her comments made it clear that the monarchy has to learn from its errors and act before things go wrong. To back up claims that the Sussexes had bad relationships, pundits alluded to media stories that said the couple had flown on a private plane that a wanted U.S. fugitive had supposedly given them and stayed at residences owned by a Russian millionaire. These reports, which were generally portrayed as media claims instead of court conclusions, were used to suggest a pattern of bad decisions or suspicious connections. The presenters saw these kinds of complaints as part of a bigger picture of conduct that when taken together may hurt their reputations. Even when they were called media reports, the inclusion of these groups made people even more worried about who the couple chose to do business with and why, for business reasons, for personal convenience, or because they didn't do enough research, analysts said. The talk then went to accusations that Meghan had bullied colleagues, which first came to light in public in 2021. Wooten pointed to allegations of what he called persistent staff turnover surrounding the Sussexes. He used an account by royal journalist Angela Levin that indicated that real departures could be larger than what has been made public, since official data usually only include executive-level workers. The idea of hidden turnover figures was designed to show that things were much more unstable and that public disclosures cover up issues that are really there. Wooten used worker turnover as proof of difficulties, with management connecting the high turnover rate to issues with leadership temperament and workplace culture in the Sussexes' business. Tash used these complaints to back up her accusations with stories and alluded to a number of reported occurrences, including the well-known one about a florist, as evidence of a pattern of aggressive or rude conduct. Tash said, "If she screams at a florist, you can only imagine what she does to her staff. She must really be a terrorizer." The program used this kind of anecdotal evidence to help build a story about a bad work environment where acting aggressively toward lower-level employees would raise bigger concerns about management and character. These stories were more like examples than facts, but critics exploited them to paint a picture of personal behavior that was different from the couple's public support for better workplace culture and mental health. A video of the Duchess speaking at Godmother's bookstore with Courtney Adamo, in which Meghan gave tips on how to welcome visitors at home to help them feel more comfortable and understand social norms, was shown in response to claims of coldness on the part of the managers. She replied, "I love it when people can serve themselves, and there are things on the stove that everyone can help themselves to." This suggests that hosts may make guests feel welcome by being casual and accessible instead of dressing up for a beautiful meal. The Duchess used the tape to show a domestic, approachable side of herself that would help people connect with one another and ease societal strain. Tash was scornful of the tape, calling the Duchess's comments insignificant and disingenuous given other parts of her image and way of life. Tash added, "This is Meghan Markle, and her biggest claim to fame is talking about feminism. She was so upset when she was a little girl, and now she's telling people to wear their apron to the door when they host." For Tash, that difference made her feel like she wasn't being real advice about domestic life, didn't seem to fit with being a high-profile advocate and living the life of a celebrity. Her mocking was part of a larger rhetorical effort to show the differences between the couple's cultural output and the principles they claimed to hold. The show also went back to Prince Andrew. A report mentioned in the show said that Andrew still expects his household staff to use formal forms of address and show him respect when they are alone at Royal Lodge. The butler still says, "Your Royal Highness," and the staff still bows. This claim, which came from an anonymous source in the report, was used to look into the tension between public punishment and private continuity. Tash stated that private ways of addressing someone should not affect public results. "What people call him inside his own home, I couldn't care less," she said, but she also warned about trust. She said that letting people use titles in private but not in public makes people wonder how well symbolic restrictions work as strategies for managing institutions. Following that story, the show said that reports said Prince Andrew would not be invited to important state events in the future, such as Prince William's coronation or King Charles's death. Those stories, which were again said to come from insiders, said that William wanted to start his reign clean. No scandal, no shame, no Andrew. Not being invited to such events would be a formal way to control reputations with clear ceremonial effects. The discussion on whether to keep Andrew from state events showed both the symbolic and practical difficulties of regulating who represents the monarchy and how strictly public roles must be limited to safeguard the integrity of the institution. Tash found a middle ground between institutional punishment and family kindness when it came to Andrew's exclusion. She stated she wouldn't mind if he went to a family church service like Christmas, but she didn't want him to take on important ceremonial duties. She said, "I wouldn't want to see him in a ceremonial role at a coronation, but his presence in a suit in the back of a church for a family funeral would be understandable." The distinction tried to balance two needs, the need to protect public symbols and the desire to keep private family rituals. It also brought up a frequent point of contention in the debate: should the monarchy's reactions to personal scandals be based only on public grounds, or should private family commitments still matter? Wooten was more firm about enforcement. He said that there should be a legislative mechanism to examine and, if necessary, take away titles and styles from royals who don't work. He said, "This needs to be a parliamentary process now, and it needs to deal with a lot of them." He named Andrew, Beatrice, Eugenie, Harry, and Meghan as those he believed should be formally punished. Putting the issue in the hands of Parliament changes private family disagreements into public accountability issues. It also implies that the government has a valid role in deciding who may and cannot use royal styles in public. The request for legislative action brought up constitutional questions concerning how the monarchy, the crown's powers, and parliamentary authority are all connected. It also made a main point of the debate stand out the idea that the monarchy is not only a private family, but also a public institution whose rights and customs have civic meaning. The opinions and assessments in the program show that there was a lot of disagreement over how the British royal family should deal with members whose behavior and public stories were seen as harmful or divisive. The juxtaposition of the Sussexes' media initiatives and public testimony with the scandals involving Prince Andrew underscored a multitude of intersecting issues: inquiries into race privacy, personal behavior, reputational risk, institutional responsibility, and the boundaries of familial unity. Morgan's assertion that William would never forgive Harry transcended mere speculation regarding personal emotions. It constituted an interpretive argument concerning institutional responses when familial conduct intersects with public responsibilities and when media narratives jeopardize the symbolic capital essential for the monarchy's operation. The main point of the dispute is whether it is possible to reconcile, and if so, what circumstances would make it possible. Morgan's belief that forgiveness is rare makes reconciliation seem improbable as well, considering the size and public nature of the hurts the Sussexes are said to have caused. Wooten and Tash reiterated the notion that William's position is reasonable, protective, and ethically justifiable, that prolonged isolation is essential to safeguard the health and dignity of the monarchy and to protect William's personal family from the potential danger of further public scrutiny. They said that requests for speedy reconciliation don't appreciate how terrible the damages are or what a future monarch has to do. For them, public expressions of regret wouldn't be enough to fix their reputations, and keeping up boundaries works as both a deterrent and a defense. Counter-arguments, those supporting restorative methods, private mediation, or a more lenient reading of public testimony, were only briefly hinted at in the broadcast and were not the main topic of discourse. People who want to bring people back together can say that keeping families together helps heal differences in society, that private conversations with neutral third parties can fix broken relationships, or that occasionally purposeful acts of remorse are needed to repair harm done to institutions over time. They may also argue that the monarchy's symbolic capital may be restored by public displays of forgiveness, and that the public responds to conciliatory gestures with fresh compassion. These viewpoints highlight the ethical and practical advantages of reconciliation, while cautioning against the entrenchment of grievances that might last through generations. The function of narrative framing and media mechanics adds another depth to the issue. Morgan and the others he spoke to often used rhetorical tropes like wokeism, virtue signaling, and victimhood to not only characterize conduct, but also to make the Sussexes' claims seem less valid and to put them in a moral framework that makes forgiveness difficult to explain. Language is important. Defining the Sussexes' acts as performative moralizing makes their claims seem empty, while others who support the Sussexes frame their actions as exposing institutional weaknesses and demanding responsibility. So the choice of words has an effect on public compassion, political pressure, and the chances of mediated agreements. In current royal conflicts, modern connections are increasingly mediated by global media streaming platforms and social networks. Public opinion assessed via polls and media analysis both reflects and influences reputational trajectories. Lastly, the argument raises constitutional and symbolic issues concerning who has the power to set rules for royal styles and who selects which family members may do public tasks. Wooten's request for parliamentary monitoring emphasizes the notion that the monarchy's privileges have public ramifications and may therefore appropriately belong within the jurisdiction of the legislature. Some people disagree with that idea and say that these kinds of things have always been handled via palace channels. Many people would rather see internal family arrangements and bilateral agreements between the monarch and the family as the best way to keep the institution going. Both alternatives involve compromises among openness, accountability, and individual discretion. Both impact public trust and the monarchy's ability to meet modern standards of ethical governance. In short, the show in which Piers Morgan said that Prince William would never forgive Prince Harry, with comments from Dan Wootton, and Tash makes clear a number of issues involving personal grievances, public responsibility, reputational risk, and the survival of institutions. The panel said that the split between the brothers was profound, lasting, and important for the future of the monarchy. There are many things that could affect whether that assessment turns out to be correct over time. These include the personal choices of the people involved, changes in public opinion and media attention, legal and business changes related to the Sussexes' deals and projects, and any decisions made by the monarchy or parliament about roles, titles, and public duties. According to the people who were talking, it doesn't seem like there will be any reconciliation anytime soon. The scandal is still a good example of how a contemporary monarchy must deal with the interactions between family media and the state, and how hard it can be to separate personal anguish from public consequence when both are in the public eye. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share it.